2nd, 2020 to order. And we have a public presentation on a 2019 audited financial statement by Piroddi of BOO Canada. And when he's ready, he can begin his presentation.
The number you have called cannot be completed as dialed. Please.
Eight, 6, 7, 3, 4, 6, 8, 8, 9, 8.
Thank you.
What is it? We don't have Zoom on that?
Hello, Mario speaking.
Hello Mario, this is Village of Cache Creek. We're in open session.
Excellent. And hello, everyone. I will let you into the Zoom meeting now.
Oh, here you are. Yeah. Okay. Hello. Oh, goodbye.
Okay, I'll wait for your cue to start.
Anytime you're ready, Mariel, thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me again. We're here today to present to the public the financial statement highlights for the Village of Cache Creek for the year ended December 31st, 2019. The financial statements and the audit report were approved by Council in a closed meeting on May the 25th. Due to timing, it was decided to be done in a closed meeting and then be presented to the public before June 30th. So that's what we're here to do today. So I'll walk you through a high-level presentation of the operating results, and as always, if you have any questions, and to Council, especially if there's questions on the items not covered here, I'm happy to answer them. So when we look at your financial position, we did see that this year was a bit of a spend year. And so we saw your financial assets drop from 4.4 million to 3.4 million. But in kind, we also saw your liabilities drop from 1.2 million to $600,000. And so, you know, when we look at it, last year we had the fire truck that was purchased was sitting in accounts payable because it hadn't been paid yet, it wasn't delivered. And we also had the pump house project last year, which helped keep your accounts payable higher just because of timing and everything else. So we did see a decrease there, but again, you know, not too surprising. We knew that that was coming from last year. When we look at your net financial asset position, it dropped from 3.2 million to 2.8 million. So it's only down $400,000 in terms of what you have in terms of cash less your obligations to pay. And a big chunk of it was you purchased the fire truck for cash without any borrowing this year. If we move on to your statement of operations, we're going to look at your revenues and expenses for the year. And so, you know, this year we actually saw revenues increase from 2.2 million last year up to 3.3 million against a budget of 3 million this year. And the big change, as you can see, is in your government transfers, so all of your grants. Obviously, there was grants coming in for the pump station work, and then also this year, gas tax paid out double what it was expected to do. So that's why we saw such a dramatic jump from last year. But in the end, you know, we did see some other variances, you know, in terms of your revenue sources. That's a bit because of the transitioning of your finance department last year and how the budgeting was done. It was done more on averages as opposed to projecting forward, which is how it was done this year. So this year we'll see less budget variances, I'm sure. And if we look at your revenues and then we break it down by source, you can see that the big purple part, that was your government transfers this year. Obviously, it was quite inflated because of the large amount of work that you had going on and the double payment of the gas tax. So you can see that you can expect that to shrink to be less than 50% percent of your overall revenues. And, you know, a good quarter to a third of your revenues comes from taxation, so that's $750,000. You are fairly reliant on that money for operations as well. And if we look at your expenses and in comparison to budget to actuals, you can see that last year you were at $2.5 million, this year at $2.8 million, and it gets to a budget of $2.1 million. So you have a $700,000 budget to actual variance in there. $600,000 of that is depreciation, which isn't budgeted and is non-cash. It's the use of your assets that you have. So really over budget on your expenditure side by about $150,000 to budget. And when we come down and bring it all together, we come to your annual surplus of $521,000 versus, for accounting purposes, versus a deficit last year of $262,000 and a $972,000 budgeted surplus. Now, as a reminder, when you prepare your budget bylaw, it's not done in the same way that the financial statements are prepared. So that's why we always end up with these large budget variances. And so when we look at this, what we're seeing is that we take our annual deficit, if we deduct the acquisition of your capital assets and your capital projects, which is an expense in your budget, add back your amortization, you come to your net change of financial assets of $400,000 in a deficit position. So what this number means is that you had actually run a deficit operating budget this year. And when we look back, when we had this discussion last year, that was planned because we knew that you were going to be funding a lot of this, an operating deficit last year out of your reserves, specifically the landfill legacy reserves. And so that's why when we look at your overall surplus that you have, you're at $16 million. Of that, $12 million is represented in your infrastructure and all the equity that you have in your assets. And so you really have just short of $4 million in surpluses available for future expenditures. And of that $4 million, half of that is sitting in the landfill legacy reserve. Very brief, but these numbers are 6 months old and the world has changed quite a bit between COVID and the emergency operations that you had. So I just wanted to open it up for any questions that you have on the statements.
No questions. I think we covered them last time we had our discussion that I had, and I thank you again for filling this in last meeting. Councillor, sorry? No? Any other discussions, questions for Mario? Hey, thank you, Mario.
Okay.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you. Thank you. Everyone take care, and we'll be able to see you soon in person.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you.
Delegation, the Village of Ashcroft. Mr. Yogi Bhalla. It's a pleasure, sir, to have you here amongst us and blessing us with your presence. Along with Mayor Roden as well.
We'll send you a bill for that, it's okay.
I didn't break it, fortunately.
Christina, perhaps we could, is Yogi, are you using the TV from there?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, good.
You can see.
I found it on the floor down here. Okay.
Is it money? I don't have my flash.
Is this for these mini flash drives? Just found it on the floor down here.
Is that yours, Gareth? Yeah. Okay, it's Gareth.
Oh.
Okay. I have one, but it's big enough that I can see it.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to present. So we met a couple of weeks ago, a week ago, and talked about collaborative project on asset management. We've been working for a while in Ashcroft building things up, and it's an opportunity. There's a grant which just came out with FCM of us to work together and move forward, and you can take advantage of all the things we've gone through and perhaps not run into the same challenges we were able to overcome. So a little bit about myself. I've worked, if you don't know me, I've worked in Ashcroft for the last 5 years. And I'm quite familiar with the challenges small municipalities face, particularly trying to get asset management off the ground. After about 2 years of weekends and evenings, I took some time to develop a whole system from end to end, because I found that what was in the market was very expensive, so not out of reach for municipalities, and wasn't really practical for the kind of resources it required. So after I've done things for Ashcroft, I created a company to basically give out the software for free, but reimburse for some of the extra time it might require me. So making it as accessible, and I'll get into relative comparisons as well, what's going on around the province. Okay, why do asset management? Going forward, and pretty much now, any further funding from grants is contingent on having asset management. So actually this year they've even started asking for the LDGE report, which is the big province report the CFOs do. What are you doing on assets? So in Ontario's case, they legislated it. In our case, they're just not going to give money without you having it. So every time you ask for a gas tax, every time you ask for UDCM funding, every time you ask for anything else, there's they ask you, what are you doing for asset management? So I guess the time which was over the 5 years where I've seen it go, that time has kind of run out to implement it and get it going. So that's the first thing, the funding contingents. I'll move fast, but please just interrupt me, and I'll try and address questions. The second thing is it helps you manage the assets proactively. So that's really important to see what's coming, where do you want to put things, what are your priorities, and really do it on an evidence basis, and evidence-based decisions, and then succession. I don't know about you guys, but we call our crew the geriatric crew. So everybody's turning over, and we need to capture that knowledge before they leave. And actually that was the impetus to get it going in the first place, was how do we get this together. And my little comic, if you don't change anything, something magical happens. So why a different approach for small municipalities? We are budget constrained. We can't afford the big municipal $1 million budgets. We're time constrained. There's only usually one CFO with a couple of staff. And despite that, our other reporting burden has pretty much doubled in the last 5 years, what we have to report. Skills, who does it? Continuity, there's 2 or 3 critical staff, and retiring staff. So the succession is a huge part of this as well. So you got to capture, systemize, and capture the knowledge. Where are the pipes? Where are the valves? Do you dig here, or do you dig 10 feet there? And that can get pretty expensive. Okay, so budget. Jumped ahead. So typically, benchmarking costs, and this is the lower end of the scale. You've got asset management software, which is running the lowest end around 11K, 12K, 20K, that's the lowest side. And then annual fees of 8 to 25 every year. GIS software, Esri is the dominant proprietary software, and that's 18,000, starts at 18,000. That was a year or 2 ago. And and that's for the smallest community, and goes up to 150,000 per year. Web access, you've got a few companies out there to allow your community, where you need web access for your community to access it, right? To see where the pipes are, where the service lines are. It really helps out. That is per license basis. A Lightship is one of the companies offering, but again, per license, how many licenses do you buy? So that's the limitation there. So even if you got local licenses, the minimum you're looking at is annual fees of 35,000 for cost. And you'll get tons of offers, and if you ever want to, they start there, but typically municipalities are paying quite a bit more. And usually comes with a package of consulting, so whenever these grants come out, they say 50,000. How much is consulting? 50,000, right? So and that's where it starts. But over time, every community has spent money, and the problem with that model is that you get a report, it goes on the desk, it's not operating. I'm sorry, I'm feeling bad here.
No, there's a chair.
So, and then finally, what do you do with staffing? So there's a huge demand for asset managers, GIS managers. I said 0.5 FTE. So typically you're paying 75, 80,000 for someone with that expertise, going up usually more than that. And then you add benefits, you're looking at minimum of 90,000 just in labor. And if you use half a FTE, which is not the case, like a lot of municipalities are hiring 1 or 2 people to do this, you're paying 45 to 90,000. So minimum, you're looking at a chunk of change over 100,000 to do this. So when I looked at it, working for Ashcroft, I just couldn't reconcile. For us, it's a huge tax bill, right? It's a 10%, 15% tax bill for a small municipality. So what has happened is that small municipalities are just not doing it. And that means the funding is not going to come through. That means a lot of things happening because of it. So what I did, I took benchmarks, I took Kamloops, and these are, costs. They're paying 611,000 just for that chunk of. Can you see? Is it big enough? Okay, excellent. And they have GIS managers, technicians, engineers, and this is not all the costs. The IT costs are more. So I would say they're running about $1 million. Kelowna says 500. I know that's not true. That's more like 1.5 million they're paying per year to get this done. So here's an example for Penticton. This is their projections. So $500,000 a year for a community of 25,000. Right, so I'm not trying to scare you, but that's the reality as you go searching, and you'll get offers. And in fine print in that particular, there was 1.25 for the consultant. So I like that one. So the only solution, so I did this over the last few years, 2 years. First I gave away the software after I developed some of it. Then I found that small communities couldn't operate it, right? Because even if you give this out. So then I went into a cloud model to actually get it done. So that small community, because the resource issue is bigger than the software issue. Who does it? Who understands this stuff? So set up a collaborative model with Ashcroft, and we're doing it together. Set up and training, part of the collaborative model. Apply together, FCM app, so our app opportunities are higher. So and they'll provide 90% of 50,000, so 45,000 grant. So cost of my time, that'll be like 6 years of my cost of the time, additional time I'll spend. So just putting it in perspective, if you're going out and any offers you're getting, they're starting at 50,000 and going from there and that was the whole purpose. Get this out there, like we've just finished for Ashcroft, but provide a small municipalities or alternative. So and it avoids hiring full-time asset management and or a GIS professional. So the way I'm doing it is I'm asking the CFO to do extra work, right? So please do take due consideration that the CFO will be stepping into and doing some work to get this going. It doesn't happen by itself. And by doing that, you're avoiding hiring a couple of more staff, which is impossible for us. Second is time. This is the model actually of a small municipality implementing asset management with the legacy system. And there are multiple servers, multiple connections, that's why they need a staff of 7 or 8 to run this. This is the model I developed. So one cloud thing, you can utilize it by any different device, but the one cloud-centric model, and that allows you to share expertise and everything else, like the shared economy. How do you do it? You do it by hosting it on the cloud. So all that stuff required to host it, to back up, to administer it, you don't have to worry about it. It's just dealing with it, right? And that's what it kind of looks like. So it has connections to Excel, Power BI, which is a reporting system, QGIS, which is a open source. So it's built on open source, right? So it's an alternative to proprietary, that 20,000 license annually you were looking at. You can get it for free using open source. And so I took away the complexity of implementing that, and you can just use it, right? And it's an integrated platform. So part of the issue with that prior, the nest you saw of that was they don't have an integrated, they haven't thought through it, so they've had legacy systems, and they keep adding on, and you get something like this to make it work. And that's also the issue with some of the proprietary systems, because one does GIS, the other one does web, another one does internal reporting, third one has to export to reports for the grant funding, so it gets complex by its very nature. With open source, because you have the flexibility and there are no licenses, you can do stuff. It took me a while to develop the model and number of iterations, but that's what it is. And it's very simple, it's integrated, and it's visual and interactive. The GIS is included part of it, and the web app is included. And there's no license limitation, so you can have 1 million people working on it. And it's enterprise class, so you can literally have 1 million people working on it. So, third is skills. Who does it? So, that's my sense of humor, comic in that. You have to have something which hides. So this was my first failure trying to launch this. So, I've tried giving away, having workshops at GFOA, saying, here, take it, run with it. And I've gone, why aren't they using it, right? It just, the complexity of it scares people eventually, and the time required. So that's why I ended up with the cloud model. So to hide complexity, just simplify and educate, and show people how to do it, share knowledge freely, and provide a platform to do this. So when we met initially, I was going to come in for half an hour. I think we ended up meeting for 2 hours instead. So we just got into the nuts and bolts of it. Why use open source? No license. And you can collaborate, you can change things to suit you. So there's no limits on what you can do, so there's no licensing. You can go in and change the code. You need to know the coding, but you can change it. And it's quite agile. And the one important thing which is happening is the data is becoming more valuable these days. And it'll become even more valuable as IoT sensors come into place, artificial intelligence starts getting into things, it will become very valuable. Unfortunately, I say majority of the municipalities, the contracts are actually giving the data to the vendor. So the engineer owns the data. So you're dependent on them, and you have to pay. And I'm not trying to criticize engineers, but it's a nice model. If you can get people 100% dependent on you, it's going to, and so this helps you kind of start thinking about it and changing it, and so the municipality owns this very valuable asset. Information is very, very valuable, and it's getting more valuable as time goes by. And transparency, reliability, and security are another thing of open source. Continuity. Okay, shared resources, cloud bases. Longevity, it's based on standards. So open source is based on standards, so there's no locking. So you can port the data, you can do anything you want with it. It's stable. These things are built on, open source drives the internet. It's not Microsoft which drives the internet, it's open source Linux servers, Linux, multiple things, Apache, which drives the internet. So it's very stable, and it's scalable in a cloud infrastructure. And it's easy to, there's a lot of material out there, so education is easier. So, and preparing for the future. So a lot of sensors are going to come in, and part of hopefully what I plan to work on later is getting the cost of sensors down, so we can actually afford it. So I'm taking a different perspective. I want to work for small municipalities, not the large ones, so everything on the cheap. On the value, I was told not to say cheap, but really on the cheap. And then get some real-time monitoring, that's coming. But having that basis allows you to do that. Succession, staff demographics. I already told you about our staff, and we are going through that changeover right now. We're hiring, we're losing people, and we're hiring. And so that's a challenge. Lack of organized systems is a challenge. Processes and procedures. So you see, this is not, it's a very complex topic. Once you start touching one, it's like going down the rabbit hole. It becomes quite big. Processes and procedures, and capturing all the knowledge which is leaving. And how do you go about it? So I'm going to move faster. The software proprietary stacks are one over the other, and you pay multiple licenses. I wish I could point. The open source stack is, can you see the pointer? No. The open source stack is basically you take one central database and you can use it for multiple things. You can use it for budgeting, you can use it for financial amortization. You don't have to have more and more software. And these are actual softwares. For budgeting and buying Questica, I think that is minimum license of 100K. Tempest, CityWorks, Lightship, ArcGIS, that's the typical proprietary stack. So, okay, getting to asset management. How many people have seen this wheel? Okay, everybody has. So that's the BC structure for doing asset management. Basically, assess, plan, and implement. And I want to show you where most municipalities are landing. Most of them haven't. This is 2018, but I haven't seen much progress since the GFOA 2018. Most elected officials do not get asset management progress shared with. It's not happening. 67% say some staff understand it, 52% say that's they understand the benefits, and 24% of the staff work plans include asset management activities. So it's still, and this hasn't changed substantially. So people are still struggling, municipalities are still struggling. The not developed and underdeveloped are the majority. So I'll move fast through these slides, but basically plans are not there, strategies are not there, policies. So you're not alone in this. It's a rare small municipality. I truly haven't seen small municipalities be successful at this. I've seen them spend a lot of money, but 3 years later they're back in the same kind of, So what are the mistakes? They overcomplicate it, they delay it, and they communicate it poorly. So conventional approaches is to quantify a range of inventory, implement a $1 million software, and our neighboring municipalities did that, and it failed spectacularly. I shouldn't say that actually, but they did, and they lost all the trust. So now to redo it, it's going to cost them again. Hire 30 consultants, develop complex procedures, forget to hire an asset management resource, build 50 GIS layers, and ask for money and completely stall everything. So new approach is, it's okay not to be perfect, you gotta get started, collaborate, and that's what we're hoping to do. And it's not just you guys benefiting, we benefit from a fresh look and maybe procedures and standard procedures for ourselves. Take your taxable capital, the PSAP 3150 or accounting stuff, and start with that. So there is information we can already use. The issue is, consultants will take you on a tangent, because it pays, right? So if you can use your asset amortizations schedules, that's a perfect thing to start with. And then you can start tying that to, so you'll have pipes, and maybe as a grouping, but then you can start splitting it up and actually mapping each pipe. Determine annual funding and what is required for reserves, and plan to slowly reach the point. And that's all the province wants to see, that you're working on it and you're starting to move forward for your grant funding. So, collaborate framework, dashboard metrics, interactive reports, knowledge base, and learning and education. You don't want to have to worry about semantic layer, the ETL, which is extract, to transform, and load. Why I mention is that, again, cheap approach. I get everything from the province I can, like parcel fabric, these are things which are available, and you can actually import them. And by being an open source layer, I can actually import that stuff and incorporate it fairly easily on a downloading it on a frequent basis. So you can have, if your development is happening, it doesn't happen much, like not at the same rate as larger ones, but we can see, you can even have daily downloads if you want it, but that's not, quarterly I found was enough for us to see quarterly what parcel has changed, who's built what, and all of that. So analytics, programming, IoT, and all of that is going to be away. That's why it's the cloud model. So the complexity you won't have to deal with, and you'll have asset management reports, capturing data simply, document management. So, why you can just take a policy and modify it to suit you. You can take a strategy, modify it to suit you. You can take a plan, modify it once you've built your repositories, you can modify it and have something to present. And take off those, that circle, take off those things you needed to pretty quickly. Right? So, okay, do you want to see a demo or let's do questions first? I was fast and I promised, how much time did I take?
Just a little after 5 right now.
Any questions?
You can use it on your iPhone and all that other stuff.
Yeah, so I set it up so you don't have to buy new devices. So, you can use a cell phone and use it and go ahead and actually use it that way and no other devices.
And this is a really important question, Yogi, and I'd like you to be honest as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Can Brian Benowith operate?
Actually, no, that's actually a good point. When I started out, I was overeager. So, typically talking to urban systems, like the inspections, for example, they have 15, and Urban's our contractor, right? They have 5 pages of what we need to record. By the time my conversation with Brian was done, it's like a 2 thing you fill out. And this is what, I might as well say it, Kamloops did, they both spent $1 million, nobody in the field uses it because it's too complex and time consuming. You don't want to get in between doing work and recording something. But you have to realize you have to record it to get the money to do it. So they have to, and we've not reached the phase where everybody's using it yet. So we've just gone through a number. So I'm getting into that phase now where everybody on the cell phone will start using it. And not even everybody has work cell phones, right? The 1 or 2 cell phones, so, but it's really, really as simple as it could be made. It's been made from feedback from Brian. So. What does it look like? There's so much stuff I could show you, but this one was a broad overview of what we're planning to do. So our next steps would be to try and get the FCM grant. Even if we don't get the grant, I'll keep working with you guys because, how I've set it up is that everything's free, but the more time-consuming stuff like downloading Cadastre, importing it, I'm just asking for reimbursement for the time, right? But everything, the software and everything else is free, so we can continue and build your asset management, your stuff, and keep moving forward, regardless of the grant. But next step for us to work together on is get the grant application out, and hope FCM approves us, and go from there. I don't believe you have applied to FCM before, so I'm hoping that puts it in better stead to get grant funding. Okay. So regardless, it's going to move forward. That's the collaborative part of our work. And talking about what data you have here, so the first step is to look at, there are 5 levels where you are. Cache Creek is at level 1 for everything. So you're starting right at the ground. The data captured itself, there is no database here, data here of the shape files, where the pipes are, so typically if you go to a consultant will ask 50 to 100,000 to do that. I'll just show Christina or someone she assigns how to do it, likely Christina, and that way you can just map it. You can have public works, and maybe I'll come and sit down and sit with them for a couple of days and get everything mapped out, right, as much as we can. So, and then tie it back, we'll start with, but first step is of course getting the funding. We'll apply for that and send it off. So yeah, so a good question, thank you.
How much funding are we looking for?
FCM grant is for 50,000, and 90% of that, so 45,000 we get. So that's what we'll be seeking. So hopefully you can do for another round next year as well as you progress. But they do ask, they give higher scoring to people who collaborate. So I'm also doing it for, selfishly for Ashcroft's benefit, that we get funding this year as well, right? So, but no, it's great to be working with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
How are we for time?
That's up to council.
Do you want to see a demo of anything, or you just?
Well, yeah, certainly.
Sure.
Let's see what it involves and how it progresses through. And
So there's a bunch of maps. I'll just go to Ashcroft.
And I would just like to say that it's really nice to hear someone say that they want to focus on small municipalities. We do not hear that. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, and that's true. In terms of funding, even the structure is set up so that it's harder for us to get funding, it seems. In this, the one big positive of the FCM grant is they allow you to deduct time. So minus my cost, which is minuscule, you'll be making money. So in a way to look at it that way, so you'll be making like 40,000, 35,000 actually for time. So you can reimburse your staff for the extra work they'll be doing, just putting it out there. Because they will be doing work. This doesn't happen without work. So there's no free lunch. So on our end, we've done a bunch of maps for the community. I think that's maybe something I can show quickly. There's a whole bunch of reporting for the CFO and council on pie of how much your assets you own, how the risk profile is, the ton of reports, right? And it will take me a while to go through those. But one of the more important things is to be able to get to the community to show them what's happening, right? So when we started out was with a view that what is the end result, not where do you, and that kind of determined the project. So I'll go into the village maps and so the next presentation I'm doing for our council is comparing our work to the benchmarks, Kamloops and Kelowna. So I think we've done a better job with not spending $1 million either. So village, parcel, and utility. So there's a number of maps. I'll just show you one, and then here's myself. So we've got all the wastewater assets. So it comes up on a HTML format, so you can look at it in any device. So you can look at it in cell phone. You can look at it. So it's set up to be device. It can go on any device. I can't find the word. So wastewater. So you map all the wastewater assets, right? You click on this portable water. It'll map all the portable. You can click on a particular asset, get all the information about that asset. This is more limited. The information for the public works, which is password protected, is more. Stormwater. So all our primary assets. We haven't mapped our services yet because they're on cards, and it'll take me a while to take. On the left corner of Mr. Joe, who owned it 10 years ago, 4 feet away, is kind of, you need to map it to. There's a parcel map, which is all the parcels, and this is very useful for anybody doing planning, i.e. CAO in small municipalities. You can click on the parcel and get all the information about the parcel. The folio is this, bid is this, plan number, plan ID, address, legal parameter, what is zoning and municipal service. It has sewer, they're paying $458 for sewer. This year it has taxes into 3,000 bucks without the homeowner grant. Connections, what is the garbage bin, and what is the garbage bin number. So everything the public is asking constantly, they can go look up. They can search for property search, and they can even search the cemetery because we just started mapping the cemetery. So anybody who wants to do genealogical, I can't pronounce it. Research can look for the cemetery as well. And in here, there's a cemetery layer. So the search works by, you start typing 3 and it'll pull up everything with say 3, 4. And you'll take it right to the, and then you can look at it. So the search functionality is really simple. I even have a video of myself explaining it. Couldn't get a model to do it, so it has to do it. So, and then there's a cemetery search as well. Say, let's look for a cemetery, and I'll tell you which one it is. Oh, I don't like this mouse. So it's that particular one. If I can zoom in and click on it, I'll tell you that was reserved when it was done. For us, this is being, like it was a paper-based map which we've been using, and it had sticky tabs, and it had eraser, and half the stuff is missing, and you have to go, so it's a process actually to even get this together. We've had a cemetery for a long time, but with the advantage, hopefully we can find some empty grave sites, and actually, you know, it's actually pretty huge. And the front counter stuff would spend hours trying to find people. Hours, literally.
Wow, that
Just
is
be-
impressive, Yogi.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
very interesting.
I could show their planning maps. There is evacuation route planning, which I just finished as a project, which I'm showing tonight. So there's, you know, so different uses. You won't necessarily do all of this. Oh, the tourist map is fun to see because I've done a tourist map for tourism.
With the property information, do you have current dog licenses too?
I haven't put in dog licenses, but if council so requests, I'll get that done. I'll even put a picture of the dog.
Yeah, the cats.
So here's the tourist map, and this is important. We've got, you know, we are focused on our mosaics, and we've got mosaic walks. And this is our downtown mosaic walk. And if you click on a mosaic, and so here's a walk for tourists, and it's an interactive map. They click on mosaic, and all the mosaics populate, and they pop up. And we live in a slow internet environment, so I had to design it to work with really, really slow internet. So there's certain things, you know, certain things I don't do, like put videos, unless I use YouTube and use their CDN servers, what they call, to kind of speed it up. But here's our image, and you can look at big images as well. So the tourists, you know, we're trying to promote our mosaics, for example, or our hiking trails, or, you know, things like that. So it's coming together. It's me taking photographs, so, you know, and sorry, and that's me right there. It's been a long work, and I am definitely thankful for council for being patient, because I've bugged everybody multitude of times to try and figure out how to make this work. As far as choices go, I really am, you know, maybe I'm saying I don't really see any alternatives for small municipalities. There is the model I've come up with, so that municipalities can actually operate something. My target was no more than 10 grand for a municipality to do everything, while the alternatives are over 100. And I've hit 7,500 covering everything, including time. Actually, the software itself is free. It's the advanced, like downloading, either. So that avoids hiring another FTE for, you know, getting the data in, getting the cadastre in, or doing so that is to cover that. The actual operating of the software, if you have the skill set, it's all free. So, and you know, and because it's cloud-based servers, costs have come down, I can absorb that cost without having to, you know, so yeah. And then this is just a bit of it. There's a whole thing, BI report, which is business intelligence reports for council and staff to see what you're doing with assets and for getting funding. So there's a whole different part, but I'll stop here on the web maps.
What, you've been obviously working on this for some time. What do you foresee a new municipality like ours, if we were to go on board with it, to get to a point where it was actually showing value to us?
So the way I try to approach things is iteratively. So do some certain milestones and actually present to you. So what I would do initially is get the grant application, and that'll require some work. Amazing how much work you have to put into some of those. Then work on BI, business intelligence, and actually get you to see your financials on BI. So you can understand your financials clearly. They're color coded, and that adds a huge value. And that's like one milestone. And then you start incorporating asset management and then doing those reports. And so it's an iterative process. As far as results, how quickly this happens, it's a big area to cover. So this is going to go on for years if you undertake it, regardless where you do it. The worst thing municipalities do is they go out there immediately and buy software. And then they discover that their processes are going. So the first thing you need to do is do your governance. Get who's responsible. What is your policy? What is your plan? What is your strategy? What are your priorities? Like how you understand them. And then start building up your registry. Using accounting first, and then adding mapping, then adding, So it's a step-by-step process. And it's not like we disappear and don't come back for 2 years. Because that's what typically happens. Then you get a report, and it means absolutely nothing. So this is actually operational stuff. This is not this presentation, right? You know what I mean? Like actually trying to make it work for the municipality, which is very different than actually, doing a consultant's report. Okay, thank you.
Wow. That's awesome.
Further questions for Yogi? No? Thank you, Yogi.
Very well done.
Yes, and then thank you, Mayor Roden, as well, for allowing Yogi to progress on and tap into his talents, and then allowing us to tap into his talents.
It's been a learning experience.
Yeah, thank you.
We made use of light shift somewhat during the emergency response through consulting. And it's wonderful, but we looked into it and the costs are crazy, so.
You had a
In the
CFO
neighborhood
here.
of, for an introductory price, $500 a month.
Yeah. And that's just to have access to it,
Yeah.
not downloading.
That we adopt the regular council minutes of June 8th, 2020, as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, there was some errors and omissions. Page 26, number, where are we here? The Community Foundation Fund was the CFO Martini has checked into the reserves and reports that there are no reserve funds designated for economic development that could be used for the development of the Community Foundation Fund. That was omitted on the, under number 1 for the Community Foundation Fund. Number 3 was the 2020 flood response costs, where there was the solution to that was, as per Councillor Pittman's request, this information would be provided in the financial report. Number 4, partial omission is as per Councillor Pittman's request, the information will be provided prior to August 31st when the annual report is due. And number 5, in the minutes that as per Councillor Pittman's request, this information will be also included in the report as above in number 3. And where are we here? And I think 6 is okay.
So there's nothing really wrong with any of these, we've just omitted your part in the discussion. And-
No,
And
it-
everyone else's too.
Yeah, it was related to the specific questions. And number 3, there's flood response cost. That wasn't on the agenda. What the actual questions was on the flood response cost. Is the public asked questions that they wanted on the agenda. It was asked and answered. So where this became a whole different process of
Was our
spun
tape-
off.
Our,
or
Mark,
something.
just excuse me, Mark, was our tape recorder working that day?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
We can go through it. If Councillor Pittman has some, there's a big long list there that, quite frankly, I can't write it all down fast enough.
I'll
Perhaps
provide
you
this
could provide the corporate officer a copy of that, and we'll put
Okay.
it together for a possible change to the minutes at our next meeting.
Okay,
But I don't
thank
think we
you.
can deal with it tonight.
All right,
But really, these are items that are going to be available in due time. It's not that we have to leave everything aside and work on this. So the annual
No.
report is coming due, so the list
think-
of companies paid over
I
$20,000
think
is going
her
to be
point is
available at
that
that
it should
time.
be, it should be recorded that information will be, correct me if I'm wrong, that information, it should be recorded that the information will be provided in that report.
Yeah, it should be in the minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking for a copy of the notes that she read out tonight to bring those back to council in a written form. So that,
Okay.
so that we can consider the written version ahead of time.
Mhm.
Any further amendments, omissions?
So are we going to pass the minutes or are we going to leave it to the next meeting?
We should table them to the next meeting.
second.
Further discussion on the tabling motion? All in favor? Carried. Business arising from the delegation. This is
Is that CFO Bhalla?
it could be, or Mario, if you wish.
Yeah, or Marion. Well, I think we should definitely send him a letter of thank you and congratulations on what looks like a really amazing program. And I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried.
And ask him if we can get a sneak preview of it.
Your worship, anytime, I think the next step is.
I thought you were gone.
What? Say
Who's hiding behind here?
He's everywhere.
Oh, dear. I was just kidding about the sneak preview.
Thank you. Any further? Business arising from the minutes? At the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer status report be received and filed.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Committee reports, Economic Development,
Can
Councillor.
we just stop for a second? There was an error on the Community Foundation.
In my status report?
Well, because that motion was tabled.
That wasn't.
It was tabled the previous council meeting to June 8th. and it wasn't lifted from the table. Because it was tabled for two reasons. One, if we had $25,000 in our budget and Christina was going to look into that under economic development. The second question was there any restrictions on our landfill legacy to take funds out of there for the foundation?
I don't remember the special for landfill legacy.
So the criteria for that specific NDIT funding stream isn't here, correct? You read it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about so that motion that we did for the foundation is not, I guess, legal? Or how do you want to say it? Because that was tabled and it was never lifted from the table before we opened the discussion.
I don't think we
Again.
made a motion.
We did, it was tabled.
Just for
Prior.
clarity, are you referring to something in my status report, or are you referring back to something else on the minutes?
Page 35, I believe.
To the best of my knowledge, that was lifted from the table, but I will double check to see the notes, but.
But why
Actually,
why
let's
we
just stop it here. Just
Yeah.
add it to
Yes, please.
Councillor
Yeah.
Pittman's list, and go back and review it on our tape recorder. When you have time.
Yes.
Thank you.
I can give you the date
Economic
of that
Development,
meeting.
Councillor Peters and Councillor Coomber. Anything? Thank you. Nothing to report?
Nothing
Thank
to
you.
report.
Budget and Administrative Services, Councillor Peters or Councillor Coomber?
A thank you to CFO Martini for her diligent work on trying to get our financial statements in proper order.
Ongoing efforts.
Ongoing.
Yes. The challenge of the century. Thank you.
I know that we do appreciate it.
Any further? Thank you. Policy and bylaw review, myself and Councillor Peters. Permissive tax exemptions, page 36 to 44. The only question I had was CFO Martini is, we discussed briefly the last time we were taking the applications that we would allow for notes or compliance for ramps or automatic doors or things along those nature to help people in and out of some of these facilities. And I believe, and I just want to confirm, that's the only thing I'm asking, is whether that's covered off on page 39, number 4.
Yeah, I think that should be covered there.
Okay. Okay, yep, thank you. That was the only clarification I needed. And are we asking for a motion to establish the deadline?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make the motion to take CFO Martini's recommendation on establishing a deadline for the permissive tax exemption for 2021.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Public Works and Community Facilities, myself and Councillor Dafoe. Councillor Dafoe, would you like to, if there's anything?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
You do?
No. we'll move on.
I just have had
Yeah, sorry.
questions about possible opening of the community hall. 'Cause
That may fall under a phase 3, but I'm not entirely certain. I can't answer that question.
What we have been telling the public is that we won't be able to seriously, properly open the community hall until we are at stage 3, until the province announces.
That's kind of
we're
what
at
I've been
stage
telling
3.
people, but
Yeah.
that we're mandated by.
Isn't that next week?
There is a
Possibly.
possibility that it could even be this week. There is quite the process to go through. And most
And I think phase
urgently
3 is
by the
also
public health
phase
officer.
Within itself too, so.
Anything further? Sorry. Village Services and Liaison, Councillor Dafoe and Councillor Coomber.
There is a short document regarding the NDIT Community Foundation matching grants for your information. I have a webinar, a web meeting this week. The Interior, BC Interior Community Foundation in Kamloops is having their AGM, and I will be sitting in on that just to get some more information. And after which I will follow through with any questions that we might have to NDIT on how it would work for us.
It's my understanding from reading this that we would still have to, even if we were under the interior one, that we would still have to have a local foundation as well. And then my question for NDIT is they have development up to 50,000. Does that have to be done in a single grant application, or could it be done in 2? It looks to me like the maximum is 50,000. But does it all have to be done at once, or can it be done in a staged process?
It can be.
Or
It can
do we have to reapply though every time to a maximum?
That
of
I'm not
50?
sure.
That would be my question.
Yeah.
It shows in here that applications are received on a quarterly submission.
Yes, but can we apply more than once?
Well, I think
To a
the
maximum.
maximum is
They don't always
is
do,
50.
they don't always do that though, so that would be a question we need to have answered.
Yeah.
I was left with the impression that you could apply twice.
I actually
Up
am
to
gonna
a
be on that
maximum of
conference, the NDIT conference.
Great,
call,
yeah,
so I
you
can
will be on the
answer that
30th,
one.
yes.
On the 30th, there's an NDIT conference calls. I will ask that
That'd be a good question to ask, thank you.
And once that donation is made, that remains invested forever. So we won't be able to get any of the $50,000 back if the village needed it later down the road.
Or it can't
It's
come
one
back.
of those things that
It won't come back.
it's allocated, it's done.
It can
No,
be donated to as part of the fund, but it cannot come back to the village.
Correct, so
Okay.
it's 50,000 gone.
Just a question,
Yes.
is that made clear in that guide? Because I don't remember coming across that. Normally with anything like a foundation, there is a dissolution agreement, so that if by any chance the foundation folds, then the funds are distributed equally among those that have contributed to that fund.
With
So
the,
in that case, we would get our funds back.
With the Interior Community Foundation, if our group would dissolve, our money would go to them.
Okay.
And that's what Lillooet is. Theirs is processed through the BC Interior Community Fund.
Yes, I think I mentioned
That
that.
was
at the last
started
meeting.
in 2007.
See you guys.
Yeah, that was the information that
Thank
council.
you.
Thank you again.
Can we close the back door?
I'm pretty sure it's locked, but
Okay.
we can take a quick recess.
Yeah,
while
take a
we're-
quick recess. That
Oh,
was
are they going out? Are you
Yeah,
going out
we'll
the
go out
front?
the front door. Yeah.
Okay.
that was
Be fine.
shared by Councillor Pittman at the last meeting.
Or
That's what-
Councillor.
I mean, Councillor. I'm looking at it. Okay, so we want to know, we can apply more than once, and.
Okay, Can I move on to BC Transit?
Yes, please.
I've included the rider's guide that will be coming out in August. It doesn't take effect until then. It does have us in there for the first time. It doesn't have our on-demand service, but we will be granted some on-demand service. It's not a lot to start with, but so we've got, let me see, 5 minutes. First thing in the morning, as the bus comes from Ashcroft, stops at Cache Creek and heads to Clinton. And then we have 15 minutes around 11 to 11:15 as the bus is coming back.
So is that on demand, that's like directly to the room? Is that what
Yes.
that means? Okay, thank you.
And then another 10 minutes later in the afternoon around 3:30. As it heads back to Clinton. So what that is people that now they need to demonstrate that they are mobility challenged or they need this service in some way. You can't just say, I don't feel like going down to the bus station, I think I'll just call them and have them pick me up. Doesn't work that way. But it gives, at least just these very short times are just to see how it's going to work, because they managed to fit us into the schedule like this. If they had to have added more time, then it would have cost us more money. It would have cost us money, but this way, they just snuck us in here and there in the schedule, and we don't have to pay extra. So what it is, you call the bus driver and you say, probably ahead of time, you say, well, I need you to come pick me up because I'd like to get into Clinton today or into Ashcroft. So they do that before they head to the bus stop. So they'll go pick the person up and then go to the bus stop and pick up anyone who's there and continue on their way. And they will drop them off if they come back. They will drop them off on their way through. So, and this again does not start to take place until August. And I've also included the ridership numbers, which we've never seen before for Cache Creek, on page 51. Not bad for a new service. You can see in March everything starts to go down. And the Kamloops is the once-a-week trip for people in the local area. They head into Kamloops or 100 Mile House. And we like going to Kamloops, but 100 Mile House not so much apparently. Yeah, Clinton gets a very good use of their bus throughout the week. Did anybody have any questions? Our next meeting is in September.
Thank you for that report, Councillor Coomber.
Okay.
Protective Services, myself and Councillor Coomber. Anything?
The river continues to go down slowly.
That's positive, yeah. Thank you. Intergovernmental Relations, myself and Councillor Coomber. Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program. 30-page survey. It's not mandatory by the sounds of it yet. And perhaps I was looking for some of the criteria on what this means to our municipality. Is it to allow us to gain funding for climate change?
Yes.
Is that what it means?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we are required to submit that report in order to get our gas tax funding.
Okay,
I'm not positive on that, but that's my recollection.
okay.
It wasn't mandatory this year, but it was recommended.
Right,
So-
yeah, that's what I did read it. Yeah. Thank you. Resolution submitted to Southern Interior Local Government. Yeah, that was a resolution submitted by our council. And it looks like they'll be dealing with it in the future at some point.
Yeah, I was almost looking forward to standing up on the floor of UBCM and addressing this, but not this year.
No.
I don't know if we know yet how they're actually going to manage their conference this year.
Well, in the newsletter, they said they were gonna do it by video conference, but.
Yeah,
And you
but
would still have to register, so like the things that you would attend in person, you would have to still register for the video portion of it.
yeah, I just don't see how the
Yeah,
the
lack of
plenary,
reservations.
I don't see how the plenary is going to
Yeah.
work, but
Well, it was something like that done for the GFOA last year. And it was like a live connection where people on the computer watch the presentation, and then if they have questions, they just log in the question, and people on plenary, then they will ask, and some will answer. So it's pretty interactive, but it's a virtual conference, so it has limitations.
it
It's
just doesn't have the same punch that standing up and debating something does.
Definitely doesn't.
And a lot of these resolutions require debate because
Mhm.
otherwise most people will just not even vote for them.
A lot of the ones that were put forward last year were based on Lower Mainland experiences without taking the rest of BC into account, and so that's where it was important that the rest of the province be able to speak, so.
We'll see how it unfolds. I'm pretty certain they're trying to figure out all the different methods of trying to get everyone engaged. Anything further under intergovernmental relations? And we're on to information correspondence. Well, I'm not sure if this would be under new business or information correspondence, but we'll deal with the joint letter between Mayor Roden and myself addressed to Chief Superintendent Brad Hughley, Commander Southeast District RCMP, outlining the concerns that we both have in our communities of lack of a commanding officer and a full detachment that's up to capacity. And the purpose of the letter is for council to look at. Unfortunately, Barbara and I met, or Mayor Roden and myself met on Friday, late Friday afternoon. And this is she was kind enough to do up the letter. And if it meets council's approval, we'll have myself sign it and send it off jointly to the Southeast District RCMP Commander.
I've been involved in the RCMP through work for probably 15 years, and unfortunately this is kind of status quo so many times without an appointed commander and lacking sufficient members.
I would like to move that we send the letter to Chief Superintendent. However you say, how do you? Second.
Any discussion on the contents? Or otherwise? All in favor? Carried. Information or is there anything under, further under information correspondence, sorry? No. Seeing none under new business? Questions from the press, I guess?
Excuse me, there was one item I had put on your tables for new business.
Yeah, sorry about that, Martin.
This came in late last week, and I only had a chance to get at it this afternoon. There is a new ministerial order essentially requiring all municipalities, local governments, regional districts, et cetera, to open their meetings to the public, move to a different venue, do whatever we can, in other words, to increase to allow more public participation. Tonight is, and our budget, financial plan presentation were a little different in that we are able to accept questions from the public. There are several ways that we can comply with this, i.e. by allowing all of our meetings to be conducted this way so that the public can call in. They are hoping that we can have public actually present rather than in an electronic capacity. They are also specifying in the actual order that there we go. On these pages, on page 3 of 11 of the actual order. I don't think any of the other pages have any numbers. And the last item under open meetings, municipalities, this section applies despite Section 3 of the Community Charter and any applicable requirements in a municipality procedure bylaw of a council. Because it refers to procedure bylaws, I attached our procedure bylaw as well and the amendment. The amendment doesn't really apply. However, I have pointed out where there will be conflicts where this bylaw can be overridden. It says under definitions that the village office means the facility that holds the council chambers where regular council meetings are held. 5A, regular meetings of council shall be held in the village office. Now, this new ministerial order gives us the okay to not follow our own procedure bylaw, in which case we need to determine the best course of action. One of the easiest, I won't say it's the best, we need some discussion on it, but we could continue with these kinds of presentations and allow the public to dial in, or we could change to over to the community hall.
At what point are we going to say we can hold a regular meeting with people in here?
In here, that would depend on the public health officer, the BC public health officer, that is. Because in here, we cannot easily maintain the 6-foot distancing that's currently a requirement. We can in the community hall.
The dilemma arises is the same as the regional district is. It looks like, based on the emails that I'm seeing now, is that they're going to move school district, Kamloops School District, TNRD, City of Kamloops, into the venue at Interior Savings Center, and spend a pooled amount of money to do that, which we don't know what that is yet. Having said that, we're still going to spend between $40,000 and $120,000, depending on the board's appetite, to renovate the boardroom or change the boardroom to allow for what we're discussing tonight as well. So if we're going to do something, the money should, in my opinion, be spent in this office rather than another location, because it'll cost some money.
My question is, what, this is not permanent. Whatever decision we make is during to have these meetings held this way would be during the restrictions that we're undering with social distancing. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so this would be a temporary measure for us. What are the shortcomings? What are the things that we would have to do to make that meeting happen in another venue?
Martin, thank you. From my perspective, it's permanent, not temporary. We're making the changes to live stream every council meeting.
Oh, I'm not talking live streaming, I'm talking about meeting in the community hall so that we can have the public present with social distancing. You said the chair's up.
Yeah, so until this COVID is done.
And the guidelines are to live stream those meetings as well.
The guidelines state that we have to provide an option for public participation, either or through electronic means or a different venue. We can combine those two, we can mix and match, we can decide on one or the other, but we need to provide that opportunity for public participation at the meetings, not after the meeting.
So if we had it at the community hall with social distancing, we wouldn't have to live stream.
Correct.
But may I intervene? We are talking now about technology, and everyone right now is moving towards computer and live stream participation and so on. Having these meetings in a live stream would allow people with disability to participate, which otherwise they wouldn't be able to come and stay here. People who are ill, have the flu or something, and they are bedridden, they cannot be here, but they can be in the front of the computer, and that's the question. We can have the young people more involved in these debates, which I don't see young people away from their computer for too long. So we can argue that having a live stream meeting is probably the way we should go. But again, it's not my decision to make, so I'm just pointing out some ideas there.
Councillor.
I think the best would be going to the community hall and doing the public meeting and the live streaming, because not everybody has computers, so some people want to come in publicly and speak. And but we do have the situation where we look and we go, okay, our meetings have been open to the public and they're not coming, but
Mike Martin.
I'd like to echo Councillor Pittman's comment that we do have a significant amount of people in our community that are not very familiar with it. They would not be able to participate in a live stream. To combine the two would be the ideal. The additional cost for Kamloops, I don't know what those costs are for us. There would definitely be some additional costs for disinfecting the facility after the meeting, and for limiting how people get in through the door. We'd have to have some supervision at the door to make sure, even at the door, that people are staying separated. I don't see it being a big cost, but there will definitely be a cost to implement something at the community
as well.
Pardon me?
Public would have to be in a screening as well.
Public would have
Screening the public before
Yes.
they would come in as well.
Yes.
To make sure they're recovering.
Do you have any symptoms? Have you been out of the country
We have to take
within
the
the last
temperature.
14 days? That kind of thing.
Like,
No,
public
just
could just ask
public.
some questions.
The vaccine is approximately 2 years away. We know we're going to be stuck with this. Does that mean that we go ahead and shift our council chambers over to the community hall and spend the money on the electronic criteria, or short circuit the whole thing and say, we aren't getting a bunch of people to our council meetings? But I agree with you, Christina, that we will get more interaction through that square rectangular piece of equipment. And that if we're gonna spend money on anything, it should be in this room. This is our council chambers. This is what we're gonna call our base, if you wanna call it that, for for years to come unless we have a new council chamber that we can fit into our budgetary process, so.
I like the live streaming. I also like having people, public here. We don't own our live streaming equipment, so we're sort of at the mercy of Hub Online when it is able to come. There may be a time when it is not, so we will not have that option. Perhaps we should look at doing some upgrades to both this room and the meeting room in the community hall.
That's the cost factor that we're discussing now.
Yeah.
We're not relying on Gareth to do it anymore. There's gonna be a cost to it. Is the cost going to the community hall and here, or the community hall separately? I would think, I don't know what the criteria would be to allow 1 or 2 people into the council chambers. If they want to participate in a council meeting, it's up to council. So
My concern right now is cost. That's, moving to the community hall would be a much lower cost than trying to finance putting equipment in either location at this particular point in time.
We could look
Unless we
in,
can get funding for it.
That's, yeah, I'm thinking that if, there's gotta be a grant out there for this. But the reason I brought up the community hall was that it would be nice to upgrade that little meeting room in some ways so that we can market it better.
Sure.
Right.
It's our EOC as well, so.
Exactly.
So there is really good reasons to do it. But if you take what's happening in Kamloops, where the board is gonna contribute money, the EOC is in that spot now. They're kicking the EOC out. They're gonna put them somewhere else and take 3 different governing bodies and split the cost 3 ways, possibly, if that's the way the board wants to go. And it looks like they're gonna be going that route. And then in turn, having to renovate our boardroom, because at some point, we're gonna have to go back to our boardroom, and live streaming our meetings is what our board wishes and what the public is asking for. So that move, in my opinion, the move to the Sandman Center, Interior Savings, whatever it is called now, is, that part I don't get. So renovate our boardroom, that's what do we short circuit this? But your point is, it is our EOC, and the money is well spent both locations, so.
And the ability, as you said, to market that meeting room for other things if that technology was available is a plus as well.
I've always visualized a nice whiteboard up here with, well, not a whiteboard, but a monitor, where if we had council members phoning in to the meeting or Skyping, they could be present for people in the public watching.
Looks like that's where we're headed in a big way in the future.
Well, by the time we get there, let's hope that we don't have to jump ahead to even newer technology.
Yeah.
So this is effective
Well, we can't change.
right away?
No, we
It-
can't change our procedure bylaw without public notice, can
Yes,
we?
this is telling us we can.
Yeah.
Right, Mark?
Okay, yes, it is, the ministerial order took effect on signing. Do we have to comply with it immediately? No, they realize that it is going to take time. What that ministerial order does is give us the authority to not follow the particular term in our procedure bylaw. It does not require us to amend our procedure bylaw. But council may still want to amend their procedure bylaw. I'm thinking back to that public hearing we had with Fulcrum.